Sand in my teeth. Rotor wash in my ears. A boy's hand in mine as we crossed the alley toward the convoy. Then the sat phone vibrated against my plate carrier like a hummingbird trapped under Kevlar. I almost let it go to voicemail. You don't take calls mid-extraction. But something, call it a mother's radar, made me answer. Mrs.? The voice was raw, breathy. This is St. Francis Children's. Your daughter is in critical condition. My brain didn't process the words in order. Daughter. Critical. My tongue tasted copper. What happened? A pause. Paper rustled. Somewhere behind her, a monitor beeped too fast. Your husband's new wife brought her in. She said a fall. But the injuries, they don't align. The nurse swallowed. I called the detective. He's not moving on it. Why? Because her brother is the police chief. The alley narrowed. My world narrowed with it. I watched my team load the boy and his grandmother into the truck, mouths moving in a language I couldn't hear over the rushing in my skull. Listen to me, the nurse whispered, stealing courage from someplace nobody had given her. If you want the truth to come out, it's on you. For a beat, the war zone around me was quieter than the phone line. I said, prep her chart. Don't discharge. Document everything. Photograph everything. Chain of custody on every item of clothing. I'm 6,000 miles away, but I'm coming. Ma'am, she started. The line clicked dead. Not her fault. Mine. I was already moving. I handed my second the sat phone and the last of the instructions for the handoff. Take them to Gaziantep. Keep the convoy rolling. You're breaking protocol, he said, not accusing, stating a fact. Protocol doesn't raise my kid, I said. Wheels up in 30. 30 turned into 21. Our pilot owed me from Kabul. He didn't ask why. On the runway, heat shimmered off the tarmac like a mirage of all the things I'd thought were solid. As the bird clawed for altitude, I stared at the map on my lap, at the ocean between a mother and the room where her daughter lay under lights too bright for small eyes. Here's the thing about systems. They keep secrets for the people who build them. And the moment a system chose my daughter's pain as its price of silence, it made itself my enemy. What happens when the people sworn to protect become the ones who disappear a child's truth? You stop asking permission. I crossed off 3 names on a list I'd kept for years. The detective, the chief, the woman who brought my girl in with a story she couldn't sell to a nurse with a conscience. I wasn't flying home to scream. I was flying home to pull every lever they thought belonged to them. And when the plane touched down, their power would start to shrink, on camera, on paper, in court, until the only thing left of their protection was a headline about how it failed. The air hit me like a wall when the plane door opened. Humid, heavy, wrong. Not the air you want in your lungs when you know your child is breathing it from a hospital bed. My boots hit the tarmac before the stairs were fully locked. I had no suitcase, no pause, no script for pleasantries. Just one backpack with the documents I'd need to strip people of power. A black SUV waited. The driver didn't speak English, didn't need to, he knew the route. St. Francis Children's Hospital, straight through the city's sleeping arteries. Streetlights streaked across the windows, turning my reflection into something I barely recognized. Hair flattened by a headset, eyes that hadn't blinked enough to cry. The nurse was waiting for me in the ER hallway. No smile, no small talk, just a slow shake of her head before she led me in. The room was too white. My daughter's skin was too pale. Machines hummed, beeped, hissed, as if her small body had been turned into a battlefield of its own. She's stable for now, the nurse whispered. But you need to see this. She pulled back the blanket. My breath locked. Dark bruises in shapes you don't get from falling. Tiny finger marks on her wrist, too small to be mine, too cruel to belong to someone who should have loved her. I touched her hair gently. Who did this to you, baby? Her eyelids fluttered, but she didn't wake. The nurse slid a sealed evidence bag onto the counter. Inside, the clothes she'd arrived in, still damp in places I didn't want to think about. I documented everything. Photos, timestamps. I also recorded my call with the detective. You recorded it? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She nodded. When he said, drop it, I knew you'd need proof. That was when the door opened, without a knock. She walked in like she owned the place. The woman my husband had married while I was still learning to breathe after the divorce papers. Her perfume hit first, then her voice, syrup over poison. "You're here," she said, almost smiling. "We should talk before you do anything rash." I stood slowly, every inch of me shifting from mother to something she didn't want to meet. "No," I said, stepping closer. "We're going to talk after I make 3 calls. The first to a lawyer, the second to a journalist, and the third," I glanced toward the nurse, who gave the smallest nod, "to someone who outranks your brother." Her smile faltered. "You don't know what you're starting." I looked at my daughter. "You have no idea what I'm finishing." By the time she left the room, her perfume had already been erased by the scent of antiseptic and rage. The nurse handed me a slip of paper. 3 numbers. 3 names. "Allies," she said. "You'll need them." The first number belonged to a man whose voice could move court dates forward without permission. The second, to a journalist who had built a career exposing the kind of people who thought they were untouchable. The third was the kind of number you never store in your phone. You keep it on paper because some names can't be linked to you until it's too late for anyone to stop what's coming. I stepped into the hallway and called the journalist first. "Who's protecting her?" I asked. Silence on the other end, then a slow exhale. "I've been waiting for someone inside the family to talk," he said. "They've kept their hands clean for a decade. But I've got files, sealed police reports, hospital logs. You're the missing piece." We agreed to meet before dawn. When I returned to my daughter's room, she was still asleep, but her hand had shifted just enough for me to see the tiny hospital bracelet. Her name, her date of birth, and the word victim. It felt wrong seeing it there. She wasn't a victim. Not anymore. I left the hospital just before 4 a.m. The city was still sleeping, but I wasn't. My cab dropped me at a side entrance to a parking garage. No cameras. No attendants. Just one familiar figure leaning against a car. My father-in-law. He was still in uniform, his medals catching the dim light. His face unreadable. "I heard," he said simply. "And I'm not here to calm you down. I'm here to make sure you don't miss." We sat in the car. He handed me a folder, thin, but heavy with the weight of truth. Inside were photos, sworn statements, and something I didn't expect, a signed affidavit from one of the police chief's own officers. "Why would he risk this?" I asked. "Because," my father-in-law said, starting the engine, "even the dirtiest walls have cracks. And you've got a hammer." We drove in silence, the streets blurring past. We weren't going home. We weren't going to the station. We were going straight to the one place her brother couldn't touch, the federal building. By sunrise, they have a file so thick, the only way to close it would be in court. The lobby of the federal building was empty, save for a security guard who looked at us like we were bringing a storm inside. My father-in-law's badge and uniform cleared us through without a single question. On the 12th floor, a woman in a dark suit was already waiting. She didn't offer her name, just a small nod toward a conference room. Inside, the walls were lined with locked cabinets. She placed a black recorder on the table and pressed a button. "Start from the beginning," she said. I told them everything, the phone call in Syria, the hospital, the detective who never showed, the whispered warnings about the police chief. Every word felt like it scraped something raw inside me, but I didn't stop. When I was done, the suit reached into her folder and slid a photo across the table. It was my daughter, taken months before, sitting on a playground bench. The date stamp told me exactly when. I'd been overseas. She should have been in school. "She was being watched," the woman said quietly. "This is bigger than you think. We've been building a case for years, but your testimony puts a name on what they've done. It links the chief's family to multiple cases we couldn't open without a direct witness." I leaned back, the air heavy with something between relief and fury. "So what now?" "Now," she said, "we move fast. Before they know you've spoken." By the time I left, there were 3 different teams assigned: federal agents, internal affairs, and a civilian oversight unit, all converging on one target. My father-in-law walked beside me to the car. He didn't speak until we were on the street. "They're going to panic," he said. "And when they panic, they'll make mistakes. That's when we push." Sure enough, the first crack came less than an hour later. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Just 2 words, "Call me." I ignored it. Minutes later, another message came in. This time from my husband. "She's gone." Packed a bag and disappeared. I stared at the screen, knowing exactly where she'd run. Her family thought they could circle the wagons, hide her, keep her safe from what was coming. But they'd forgotten something. You can't hide from a truth that's already in motion. And by sunset, the first arrest would prove it. By sunset, the streets around the police chief's house looked deceptively calm. Kids riding bikes, sprinklers hissing over manicured lawns. But I could feel the shift in the air. From the passenger seat of my father-in-law's truck, I watched as 2 unmarked sedans rolled up the block. They parked without ceremony, doors swinging open to reveal federal agents in plain clothes. No sirens. No shouting. Just quiet, deliberate movement. "This is it," my father-in-law murmured. "They're going in." The agents didn't knock. One used a key. Later I'd learn it had been seized in a raid earlier that afternoon. They disappeared inside. Seconds stretched like hours. Then, a figure emerged, not the police chief, but his wife, my husband's stepmother, hair disheveled, eyes darting. She wasn't in handcuffs yet. 2 more agents followed, each carrying sealed evidence bags. Even from here, I could make out one of them. The dark leather purse I'd seen my daughter describe to hospital staff. The one she said had been used to carry something. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my husband. "They're saying you've ruined everything. Dad's furious." I didn't reply, because across the street, the police chief himself finally stepped out. No uniform, just a gray t-shirt and jeans, and wrists bound in steel. The neighbors froze mid-sentence, staring. A woman dropped her grocery bag, oranges rolling across the sidewalk. One of the agents spoke briefly into a radio, then waved to a black SUV that had been idling at the corner. "They're taking him straight to federal holding," my father-in-law explained, starting the engine. No pit stops. No backroom deals. But I wasn't watching the chief anymore. I was watching the woman in the doorway, my husband's stepmother, gripping the frame like it could hold her upright. Her gaze found me across the street, and for a split second, her face drained of every trace of defiance. She knew. Whatever power she thought she had, whatever protection her family name once offered, it was gone. My father-in-law shifted into gear. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll go after the rest. Every single one who kept their mouths shut while your daughter suffered." I nodded, but my mind was already ahead of him, because I wasn't just after justice. I was after the silence that had shielded them, and I was going to make sure that silence ended in public. By morning, the news had detonated across every major outlet. Police chief arrested on federal warrant. Evidence linked to ongoing child abuse investigation. I didn't need to read the full articles to know my husband's family was scrambling. The calls started before dawn. Some numbers I recognized, some I didn't. I let every one of them go to voicemail. At exactly 9:12 a.m., the front gate camera caught my husband standing there, still in his military-issue jacket, jaw tight. He didn't buzz in. He just stared at the lens like he could will it to open. I didn't move. Instead, I slid the manila envelope across my kitchen table toward my father-in-law. Inside was everything I had compiled during the nights I couldn't sleep. Names, dates, recorded conversations, and sworn statements from hospital staff. Proof that my husband's stepmother had been present and complicit the night my daughter was harmed. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just picked up the envelope and walked out the back door toward his truck. By noon, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a news notification. A live press conference. My father-in-law stood at the podium in full uniform, reporters crowded in, cameras clicking like machine gun fire. "This investigation will not end with one arrest," he said, voice steady, every syllable deliberate. "No title, no badge. No family tie will protect those who harm children or protect the ones who do. The camera panned, catching my husband at the edge of the crowd, his face pale, his lips pressed in a thin line. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. The comments section exploded in real time. Finally, someone's doing something. About time the silence broke. Who's the woman in the doorway? They didn't know yet. That part, the public naming, the shattering of every ounce of their control, that was coming. And when it did, it wouldn't just be a headline. It would be the moment the entire city realized that their untouchable little circle had just been split wide open. The following 48 hours were a blur of subpoenas, interviews, and the kind of silence that only comes before a storm. My house was under discreet surveillance now, not for my safety, but to ensure that no one tried to negotiate off-record. On the third morning, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "Ma'am, it's time." I didn't ask questions. I just put on the same plain black dress I'd worn to my mother's funeral, a dress that meant business, not grief, and drove to the courthouse. The hallway outside courtroom 4B was lined with faces I knew all too well. My husband's friends from the department, his new wife's family, a few high-ranking city officials who used to smile at me at fundraisers. Not one of them met my eyes. Inside, the prosecutor's voice was crisp, almost surgical. "Your Honor, the state moves to admit Exhibit C, the full recording of the conversation between the defendant and Detective Mark Hanley, taken 2 days after the incident." The room went still, and then my voice filled the speakers, calm, clear, unshakable, as I asked my husband's new wife, "Do you think she'll ever recover from what you did to her?" Her reply, dripping with arrogance, "She'll survive, but maybe she'll learn to stay in her place." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge's pen froze mid-note. My husband's jaw tightened, but he didn't turn to look at her. The prosecutor didn't pause. "Your Honor, Exhibit D, the bank transfers showing payouts to multiple parties in exchange for suppressing evidence." One by one, their secrets spilled out, names, amounts, dates. The protection network they thought was invisible now laid bare under courtroom lights. When it was over, the judge didn't adjourn immediately. Instead, he leaned forward, voice heavy. "This court does not tolerate the abuse of power, especially when it is used to shield harm against the most vulnerable. I will ensure the full weight of the law is applied." I didn't look at my husband as I walked out. I didn't need to, because the next time we'd see each other, it wouldn't be in our home. It would be across from each other, with a table and the law between us. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. Guilty on all counts. The gavel fell like the final note of a war drum. My husband's new wife clutched the edge of the defense table, her perfectly manicured nails pressing into the wood until they went white. His eyes were on the floor. The same man who once prided himself on control now stripped of every ounce of it. Outside, the courthouse steps were flooded with reporters, microphones stretching like spears. I didn't stop. I had no statement for them, not yet. My only goal was to get home to my daughter, who was still recovering, still learning to sleep without fear. That evening, as I sat by her bedside, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I didn't know. I swear. It was from one of the officers who'd been at our house the night it happened, one who had laughed in my face when I begged for help. I typed back slowly. "You didn't want to know. And now you do." The days that followed were quiet. Not peaceful. Not yet. But a quiet that meant the storm had passed. The police chief, her brother, was forced into early retirement, his badge taken, his influence gone. The detective who refused to investigate lost his position and his pension. My husband, he would spend the next 20 years behind walls he once used to trap others. As for me, I didn't celebrate. Revenge hadn't been sweet. It had been necessary. One afternoon, as I was making tea, my daughter shuffled into the kitchen, her hair messy from sleep. She leaned against me and whispered, "Mom, you kept your promise." I didn't ask which one she meant. I just held her tighter. Because in the end, this wasn't about power or winning or making them fall. It was about making sure that every door they once used to hide their crimes was locked forever. And for the first time in months, when I looked at her, I didn't see fear. I saw freedom.